Welcome to this morning's edition of your morning briefing. I'm Jeff DeForest along with Mike Lubie here. I'm very happy to be with you on nofilter.net as the NBA season really swung into full gear last night. Still a couple of more games on the slate tonight, but the majority of teams were in action for the first time on the Wednesday night card, including the defending Eastern Conference champions here in our hometown of South Florida, it's known as, because nobody can figure out what Miami-Dade County is. Is it a foreign country? Should it be isolated from the rest of the state? Very possibly so, because most of the state of Florida, as you probably recognize, no matter where you are, even if you're in a foreign country, is largely occupied by hillbillies. The average welcoming sign, I mean, it's more than one, right? As you go through so many small towns like Kissimmee and Lutz and all of these, weirdo places that are north of Palm Beach County here in South Florida, the welcoming sign says, "Squat down like a pig." Welcome to Port St. Lucie. Oh, okay, great. That's the way we'll do it. But and there was reason to be optimistic about the Miami Heat. They were taking on the lowly Pistons last night. And sure enough, it turned out to be a nail biter, one of those games where, and Lubie, you can relate to this. I mean, it was one of those games like that San Antonio Ray Allen shot game where you, along with thousands of others, had already left the building to try and get out of the just ridiculous parking situation that there was surrounding what is it now? The Casaya Center.
Casaya Center, yes.
Casaya Center. Okay. Changed from FTX. Sam Bankman-Fried. I don't think they ever banked any of Sam Bankman-Fried's money that he owed them for having the naming rights there. Yeah, give me $100 million. What do I care, right? I gave $10 million to Larry David. Up here for 30 seconds in a commercial. Brady's got $55 million of my money. I mean, this guy's something else. He's going to be on the stand today. That should make some news. And for some very interesting clips, if they are, I don't know if they're allowing cameras in the courtroom, but that would be the definition of a kangaroo court. You would have to think. But the court last night, that was of importance. And I know you were probably schwitzing at the end as the Miami Heat ended up winning a nail biter with Cade Cunningham, a player for the Detroit Pistons who were in town off a god-awful season of a year ago. The Pistons won 17 games last year. Cade Cunningham, a former number one overall pick of the Detroit Pistons. Not necessarily one of those guys that when he was taken number one. Are the Pistons just a cursed franchise ever since they drafted? And we kind of touched on this yesterday. Darko Milicic.
Yes.
Have they been cursed ever since?
They went to, I think, 2 or 3 more conference finals. But after that, they've been dreadful for now. God, is it 15 to 20 years? They've been dreadful a long time now.
Did we ever find out what country Joe Dumars is hiding out in? And what aliases he may be using right now?
He's an NBA exec.
To shrug off and fend off the criticism of drafting Darko Milicic ahead of Carmelo Anthony, Chris Bosh, and Dwayne Wade, and others in that first round of the draft that particular year when LeBron James was the number one overall pick. And you're thinking, Darko, don't get cute. We always say that in sports, don't get cute. Anyway, there were any number of spectacular storylines to follow on the opening night of the NBA. Now, I personally, Lubie, and you know this from doing broadcasts with me for a long time here in South Florida, I'm a big fan of the over 7 foot big white stiff of a geek. I love those players. I just do. I mean, it goes all the way back with me a long time ago. One of the original 7-footers. That was this sort of, well, you know what? He's a stretch power forward. He's not exactly a center. You're 7 fucking feet tall. Get in the paint there and score a basket. Have a hook shot. Throw one up. But Mel Counts was with the Boston Celtics, and he wasn't awful, but he was a string bean of a human being, and you thought that he was fragile, going to break like glass at any time. I don't know that he incurred an overwhelming number of injuries during his career, but he would definitely come under the heading of the big white stiff. Auerbach used to throw him out there from time to time, but he was part of a great team. He didn't have to be very good. I mean, they had every player in the league because the league was stacked that way. And I don't know what pictures did Brad Auerbach have of the commissioner that he allowed him to get away with this murder that was going on there. It didn't matter what they needed; they somehow found a way to get it. It was the same with the Yankees using the Kansas City A's for many years and Charlie Finley as their own personal farm system. And they would say, you know what? Why don't you give us this Maris guy who's going to win back-to-back MVPs and set the all-time record for home runs in a season, not by a guy who had just needles in his arm as he came to home plate
Yeah, exactly.
and a head the size of a bowling ball. And, Bud Selig didn't suspect anything there. No, Barry, he looks fine. I saw him just the other day. Meanwhile, he's drilling 3 holes in his head, and you're looking for some pro bowler to just roll that thing down the lanes and pick up a spare. Unbelievable. How does your head get bigger, Lubie?
I don't know. I don't know the mechanics.
Ask Victor Conte, I guess, is the way to go. But yeah, there have been any number of them. I mean, some of my favorites, besides Hank Finkel, was known as the human victory cigar. I believe he was a big white stiff 7-footer. Also with the Celtics, Auerbach would only throw him in there when the game was already under wraps. He would light up a cigar in the arena. Imagine that. That's throwback stuff. Light up a cigar in the arena and go, "Hey, Hank, you're in." Henry Finkel, total stiff, real awkward player. Usually one of those guys who would pick up like 5 fouls in 3 seconds. Tom Burleson was one of my favorites. NC State, had a cup of coffee there in the NBA. Did he last any period of time in the NBA? I want to say if he did, it was with relatively little to no distinction whatsoever as an NBA player. Tom Burleson, NC State. And it was Burleson and Monty Tao, the long and the short of it. They were an excellent college pairing. Monty
played
Tao
7 years, 74 to 81.
Okay. Did he do anything statistically, or was he just an abortion as a basketball player? Yeah, he was 7'4", and Monty Tao was 5'2" while wearing Frenchy Fuqua shoes. Remember that guy from the Pittsburgh Steelers, or was that too arcane of a reference for a lot of people?
I know of the person. I don't remember.
Frenchy Fuqua, one of the original characters in the NFL, when the NFL had no personality whatsoever except guys in A-class. This guy was wearing shoes that had fish bowls for heels. And, it wasn't necessarily a very popular look for men back at that time. And had like goldfish in the heels of his shoes.
Yeah. It was like a big thing in the 70s. I still don't understand.
Tao, if he had those shoes on, which were like stilts, he still wouldn't have measured 5'6". That's for sure. And yet, I think he was the better of the two players as a collegian. But Burleson, because of his height, had a career. But it was always awkward, wasn't he, Lubie? I mean, don't you like watching these guys? And they seem to have, I mean, what are they most lacking in? Coordination and strength.
Yes, 100%.
You were just ready for them to break down at any time. Kristaps Porzingis, who had a big ball game last night for the Boston Celtics, a perfect example of that.
Yep.
You say that this is a guy that will never make it through a season.
He hasn't. Last year was his healthiest year, and he still missed 20 games. He missed nearly 20 games.
Yes, and he says, "I'm strong like bull now."
Or 25. He missed a third of the season in his healthiest year.
All right. Well, the reason I bring this up, and there were others, I guess Tom Bradley was another one, right?
Sean Bradley.
Yeah.
Thinking of
Tom Bradley was the mayor of Los Angeles.
I don't know.
It's early in the morning, folks.
Danny Shays is the one that I always.
Danny Shays.
He was rough because his dad was a legend. Dolph Shays is a freaking Hall of Famer, and I'm like, so why does Danny suck? I'm like, Danny was so bad.
I guess maybe his. I don't want to imply this, but you think it was the pool guy that was with his mother?
Oh, exactly.
No, he had the DNA for the height.
He looked like his dad. It's just his dad was.
Dolph Shays from Syracuse, right? Was a very distinguished gentleman, and I met him one time when I was doing a ball game, and I was at Madison Square Garden, and for some reason he was nearby where we were broadcasting from, and I said hello to him, and he was surprised because I was much younger to Forrest then that I even knew who he was, which was interesting. The guy's like a legendary Hall of Famer, but Danny Shays, another stiff, big white stiff.
Yep.
The original one was, and he was actually a good player, Billy Pulse, the Whopper from St. John's, who also was with the Nets when they were in the ABA. He was like a guy that we thought was a big white stiff, and he could play a little bit. So this is a different level of stiffdom than I'm talking about here.
Yes.
And you're kind of wondering, because we have two guys, part of the storyline, and the thread last night in the NBA, you had the debut of Victor Wembanyama.
Yes.
The much anticipated debut. Now, it would have been great, and I think Adam Silver would have applauded this move if somehow Popovich had cited load management and sat Wembanyama the entire ballgame.
That would have been amazing if they sent him his first game.
First game. You know what? The kid worked hard in the exhibition games there. What do you want from him? He's, got to put on a few more pounds. We're working with him with the strength coach there. He's taking steroids every day. But we're going to turn this guy into a real man. But not tonight there, Adam. I mean, we're going to go ahead and play the Mavericks without Wembanyama making his debut. The panels of NBA windbags, including, and I don't mean to put this man in this category because he's actually probably, I would think, a decent guy, right? Brian Windhorst
We've
of
had him on. We
ESPN.
used to have him on all the time. I
Yeah.
like the guy. He just is windbaggy. I can't lie.
I mean, does anybody really know anything about what's going on in the NBA when they have these like 10 people on a panel and they're all talking about what might happen tonight? Wembanyama. Do they know any more than we do, really, these NBA insiders? I want to say no to that. And they're all speculating this guy's going to go for like 25, 10 rebounds, maybe have 7 assists, and be the number one play on ESPN Sports Center with some kind of highlight dunk. That did not take place. That did not transpire. In fact, it was, kind of a soft beginning there for Wembanyama.
Yep.
Hard to believe that he was in foul trouble in his very first game, that the league hadn't instituted some kind of a rule. I mean, think about this, Lubie. 14 years in the paint. Badly. I mean, he literally, like Velcro, Bill Russell was stuck to this guy.
Mhm.
Walt Bellamy was stuck to this guy. The great Wilt Chamberlain, 14 years in the NBA, never fouled out of a game. How is that
That's
possible?
weird. That's weird because he was physical. It wasn't like he was a guy who didn't play defense.
No.
He was good defensively and he was very aggressive and active. I don't understand that. Well, I understand it. I just it's
You had guys like Nate Thurmond in the league there. I mean, just animals. Playing
yeah.
for Golden State. You had just really, I mean, a tough guy. Wes Unseld, man, slapping the ball in the air right out of the ball. Here's Wilt. Never fouls out of a game. Did Wes and Wilt overlap? I want to say yes to that. No?
Yeah. They played at the same time.
Anyway, I mean, I don't want to sound like one of these NBA windbags. I don't know what I'm talking about because we're talking ancient history here. But it was odd to see Wembanyama in foul trouble throughout this entire ball game. His debut with San Antonio last night, the number one overall pick, and that inhibited his chance to actually make an impact on the game. He did come alive later in the fourth quarter, though, and scored 9 points in the fourth quarter, and finished up with 15. Most of the people had overwhelming success forecast for this man in his opening game. Does look like he's going to develop into a star player. You say it's not happening right away, though, Lubies, which would have made it, very viable to consider making a bet against him winning Rookie of the Year.
I don't know. I think I win Rookie of the Year because you can average like.
I think he's already got the award.
Yeah, unless like the Scoot Henderson kid just takes totally over. I think they're going to sort of, because he's going to get all the attention. He's going to get the national press. He's the guy that everyone's going to know. It's a popularity award as much as it is. Like most writers don't stay up late night. So like the guys out west get screwed. Like no one's going to watch Scoot Henderson on the Blazers. The Blazers aren't going to get national games. So like they're not going to know what he's doing. They're not going to know what half the guys are doing. They'll know what Wembanyama's doing. So as long as he doesn't suck, he'll win Rookie of the Year. Like I think it's as a landslide already.
Henderson got off to a bit of a sluggish start. I think he ended up with 11 points in the ball game, but he was doing nothing for about 2/3 of that ball game as well for the Portland Trailblazers. So I believe got blown out in their season opener last night. I'm impressed with him. I mean, Wembanyama looks. I didn't see a lot of the preseason. I don't know about you. Did you watch this guy in the preseason? I remember seeing a lot of highlights of him versus Holmgren heads up, and that was an interesting matchup. Chet Holmgren for Oklahoma City, who didn't have an overwhelming impact on his game last night in his rookie debut. Chet Holmgren, I think he might have had like 11 points.
He's like 11 and 4, I think.
Yeah. So nothing special there. The guy that made the biggest impact, and he's been around for a while last night and made the most noise, was Zion Williamson, who also has had nothing but plagued by injury problems his entire career, some of which people would associate with not necessarily taking the soundest of approaches to the physical nature of the game. In other words, he's eating too much of that Cajun food there.
Oh, yeah.
In New Orleans. There's not a bowl of red beans and rice that this guy didn't see and think it was a slam dunk that he was going to consume it. Also seemed to not care too much, which was part of his charm when he was at Duke, right?
Yep.
That was, I mean, the whole thing. It wasn't like he didn't care, but it's like, he just had an interesting approach to the game that was a little bit different for somebody of his size, both inside and outside as a player. And people have been waiting for him to blossom for a while. So that was part of the big story. The Heat last night, your Miami Heat, did they scare you a little bit, defending Eastern Conference champions?
Yes.
up 19 in the fourth quarter.
They have
And
a
that's
weird thing with
why,
the Pistons. We talked about it yesterday. Like for some reason, the Pistons always get their goat. Either beat them or play them really close. Even when the
yes,
Pistons, like the fact that Tyler Hero would be the oldest player. Tyler Hero's 23. He's one of the younger players on the Heat. He'd be the oldest player. Like how is 20? You don't have an old wily veteran on deep on the bench. Like that's how young and how much they're leaning into rebuilding. And Cunningham went off, and good for him. But the fact that they came from 15 down with 6 minutes left to have a 1-point game and a shot to win it makes no sense to me. Like that's ridiculous.
speaking of the NBA windbags, many of them thought that Cade Cunningham would be among the players to have a big breakthrough season this year, since he
Oh, good for them.
really hasn't played much at all. And that looked like it was a distinct possibility. They might have been right about that, as he was like 8 for 11 at one point, or 8 for 10, and
He was
then
really good.
ended up at 30 points and had a chance to win the game at the end. He ended up having to fire a brick from midcourt while falling backwards and out of bounds, but it didn't go in. This was not Allen Houston beating the Miami Heat in their home building there, and the Heat ended up prevailing by 1 point, which emphasizes an idea that was given to me the other day, and we were doing our handicapping show, License to Steal, and it was more than one person that said, never lay points. Just take the money line if you think a team is going to win the game. Just take the money line. Don't lay the
Okay,
points.
does he believe that too with a dog? Like, is he doesn't want to lay points? So does he ever want to take the points? Like,
Yes, oh, absolutely. Either take the points or play the
always
money
money
line.
line. Always.
But don't find yourself in a situation like Heat fans were last night, where they go to bed, they click off the television set, they're leaving the arena, going in their cars, up 19 with 9 minutes to go. Detroit in an absolute nosedive, going backwards, and the Heat continuing to pour it on and looking great in the process, even though Jimmy Butler's having an off night. And the next thing you know, you wake up in the morning and you're thinking, "Oh my God, is Orson Welles writing this script? It's the war of the fucking worlds. Is it really over? You're listening to a radio show. You think this has to be pure fantasy. It can't be true." And sure enough, the Heat ended up winning that game by 1 point. The Celtics and the Knicks was the marquee game on the schedule last night, as um, you had the Celtics prevail in the end after the Knicks made they actually took a lead in the fourth quarter.
Yes.
In a game that the Celtics seem to have control of throughout. Another big one, stiff. Kristaps Porzingis. You say what? No shot of making it through the season without missing like 30 games?
It's health. Yeah, I think he's gonna miss 30 games. Actually, I would set it over under, and I would say about 35 games. That's like it feels like what he's gonna do. He'll play like 50 games. He'll play 45 to 50. He'll look good, and then he'll get hurt. That's what he does.
Played well last night. Had 30 points, and wow, he was dynamite both inside and outside. And that was the big thing when Phil Jackson also would appear to be just a colossal mistake on his part as a general manager, drafted Kristaps Porzingis. And I forget, you could probably rattle off like 5 guys that would have been better selections in that spot. And he showed some signs of life, but he was like a really weird guy, and he had his brother living with him. And you thought, if you're going to be this type of player and be, inclined to be injured, and we don't know if you're really all that good to begin with, maybe those European stiffs that you were beating up on weren't NBA quality players all the way around the board. And you come into the National Basketball Association, and all of a sudden the league's a little bit too tough for you. Many people thought that, but he kind of distinguished himself a little bit.
That's
and
sure.
he has when he's played, he's been an asset, and a lot of people think that that's going to be the magic elixir for the Celtics to finally get over the top. They did transform their team quite a bit, although still led by Tatum and Brown, who Tatum was great last night, and some people think he's an MVP candidate. You are not inclined to believe that, Mike Lubie Lubitz.
He's a candidate. I don't think he's going to win it.
About the Celtics being also a team to beat in the East.
Oh yeah, no, I think they should be the second most favored team in the East. I wonder what they are in the actual playoffs. I wonder if they get Porzingis and what Holiday does, and those two guys do. I'm curious.
All right, we'll see. That's our NBA overview, our analysis from last night. Any references to the big white stiff? And Wembanyama, man. I mean, if Wilt never fouled out of a game, how is this guy in foul trouble his first night there in the league? And why did Popovich let him play at all? He should have sat him the whole first week. Just said, you know what? He's only going to play 65 games this year. So we're sitting him the entire first week there, Adam. What do you think about that? That would have been something.
Amazing.
All right, we'll see you on the next edition of the morning briefing. It was great getting the NBA started. It's a disaster for Mike and Mike Lubie here
Yeah, it sucks.
because
The off season's
he
done.
he thinks that the season ends when the off-season speculation stops and the regular season begins, and then you tune out until when? The playoffs?
April. Yeah, the season doesn't. I won't care again in April. It's great
All right.
from like July to September, and then April to July.
It's like the first 44 minutes of an NBA game, right? If you just tuned in for the last 4 minutes, is that not where the game is decided? Every single time. That's kind of becoming true of all sports, is it not?
We're gonna say football sort of like that too. Like for college, a lot of time I'll just tune in the fourth quarter, and then I really didn't miss anything.
Pete Rozelle, he didn't realize how just significantly influential he was going to be in trying to bring about parity, because it really has come about.
Yep.
In sports all across the board. That's essentially true. I mean, you have, yes, your share of blowouts, but it's not a big share. And it seems like in every sport now, it always boils down to one or two plays in the final seconds and or the late innings, whatever sport you're watching, always being decided at the very end. So that's especially true of the NBA. My Uncle Joey told me that many years ago. He says, well, what are you watching this game for? Let's go out and have a catch, shoot some baskets. I'm like, no, I want to see it. He goes, it doesn't matter until the final 4 minutes of an NBA game. That was years ago. And now it's even more deeply founded in truth than it ever was. All right, we have to run. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll join you tomorrow. I'll have some selections for you on our Degenerate Friday edition of the morning briefing right here on nofilter.net. Thanks so much, Mike Lubie. Always a pleasure. And thank you for joining us here on the show. I'm Jeff DeForest, and we'll see you next time on the next edition of the morning briefing.